Welcome to another episode of Kent Hance, the Best Storyteller in Texas podcast. Follow us on Instagram at Best Storyteller. Chancellor, do you have a saying of the day for us today?
I do. Power doesn't change people; it reveals them. Somebody gets a lot of power; it reveals what they are. I had an employee one time that worked for me in Austin, was a lower employee, and then went to work at a higher position in Washington. And, overnight it's like the person had been trained by Adolf Hitler. Boy, they had power and they just, it didn't last. It was, some people, and you find this with federal judges. And one of the questions that a lot of people want to ask someone that's trying to be a federal judge, will you get federal judge-itis? And that's where, you're appointed for life and you just are a tyrant when it comes to handling things. Very few of those, I think in Texas, done a great job with the senators in promoting people and getting the right people that can handle power. But I think that's something the senators in the White House, they always look at. They don't want to give someone unlimited power that's going to abuse it.
What do you think of being appointed for life, a life term? What's your thoughts?
The thought behind that was to maintain the independence. And I still think with certain people that there ought to be an evaluation of some type that every 10 years or 15 years to see if they've abused their power, and that you have a chance to remove them if they have abused it. But on Article 3, a lot of people feel like that's very important. One of the problems we're getting into in this day and time is that a federal judge may rule, the one in Minnesota ruled the other day that ICE couldn't do certain things. Well, they have to, is the federal judge going to run ICE? Are they going to be running day-to-day operations? I don't know. That goes a bit far. And we've seen judges, some very liberal, some very conservative, make decisions and try to make those decisions meet the requirements of everyone in the nation before it gets to a circuit court or the U.S. Supreme Court. If it gets to the U.S. Supreme Court, then, whatever they decide, you got to abide by it. But people forum shopping. They decide where they want to file it, and they know what judge is going to get it. Now, if you file in a major metropolitan city, Houston or Dallas or even Austin, San Antonio, Fort Worth, you don't know who the judge is going to be. If you file in Amarillo, Lubbock, Midland, Wichita Falls, you know who the judge is going to be most of the time. And a lot of people will file in some of those areas to move their cases faster. Now, you file in Pecos, or Midland, there's so many drug cases, your case may not move as fast as you'd wished. But forum shopping and allowing someone to have an injunction on the entire nation is not good. And the Supreme Court is adjusting, and they're making some adjustments on that. I think that's going to come to an end pretty soon. One thing I wanted to mention today, Davos, Switzerland, Davos, Switzerland, they have the World Economic Forum every year in January, February. And there'll be about 3,000 people invited. And every once in a while, you'll know somebody gets invited to speak. Well, when I was chairman of the Railroad Commission, they invited me to speak and be with a panel that had to do with energy and worldwide energy prices and what we were doing in that regard. And they'll have the forum. There'll be about 3,000 people there. And they get criticized because there's a lot of CEOs and a lot of prime ministers and speakers and presidents. And they've been criticized because too many people fly in private jets and it's hurting the environment. But anyway, they had me in a conference, and one of the top officials from Total, the energy company from France, was on the panel with me, and the CEO of Philips Petroleum, one of the executives from Exxon, and it was a good cross section. But they had us at a time that the other forum that was up at that time was Christy Hefner with Playboy Magazine talking about the future of Playboy and what was going to happen and everything. We had about 10 people show up. We said, is there anyone outside? Go outside and see if there's somebody else waiting or maybe he got lost. And the other thing, the other group, the other part of the forum, the fire marshal had to shut them down because they had so many people show up. But we had, looking back on it, we had a pretty good feel of what was happening in energy, and that prices, I predicted that time prices could go to $100 a barrel, which they did. We got up to 140 at one time. Now we're seeing it down in some areas below 60 in the high 50s. But there's just, I think in the 80s, people didn't realize the SUVs and the larger vehicles were in demand. People wanted them. And supply and demand will figure it out, pretty easily. Electric cars. Electric cars are not as popular today as they were, a year and a half ago. Biden pushed it hard. Trump, he's not one that's big on electric cars. And so you see some changes, but that was, just a thought at the time that I was talking at Davos. And you'll have a lot of private jets flying there, and there'll be people from, and I'm talking about world leaders. Bill Clinton's spoken at it. George Bush has spoken at it. I don't think that President Trump has yet, but he's liable. If they invite him, they'll be expecting something off the wall, and they should.
I believe he has been invited and is going to speak.
Oh, okay, that'd be great. The president of the United States, no matter who it is, no matter what party or philosophy, they ought to be invited. Mm-hmm. We're the economic power of the world, but it's a big conference, and a lot of CEOs they like to be invited, and they want to go and discuss. And they also look at trends. What are the trends? Where are the jobs going to be? We're going to talk in just a minute about jobs. But healthcare. 7 of the 10 best jobs available in this day and time are in healthcare. And, we get it where people live to be 74, and then they live to be 76 and live to 78. Well, we'll be working on it, trying to get it to 80 or 85 or 100 or, whatever. I was on a conference one time with Boone Pickens. Somebody made the mention that no one wants to live to be 100. And Boone goes, well, ask the guy that's 99 that. The man or woman that's 99 may have a different opinion. They may want to live to be 100. But healthcare, that's a big issue at Davos. But one of the big issues this time is going to be democracies and what's happening in different countries like Iran. That country has been under an Ayatollah, a religious leader. When the most difficult, in my opinion, the most difficult people to deal with in government are people that are religious leaders, and they think that God is on their side, and if they need to kill somebody, that's okay. Mm-hmm. I talked to God, and He said it's okay. That's those are hard people to deal with. And you take the Iranians, this just average citizen back in the 70s, they didn't like the Shah of Iran because you had all kinds of freedom. The freedom of expression, freedom of speech was not one. And the CIA had put him in power in the 50s, and he was in power, and then the religious leaders started pounding him and his allies, and you had people showing up for demonstrations. You'd have 1 million people show up. Look, if you give away free hamburgers, you can't get 1 million people, and they'd have 1 million people show up and protest. That tells you how bad things are. Now, every few years, there's some protests come out in Iran, but this time it's big. There's been over 3,000 people killed. Some of them have been hanged, some have been shot. But the Ayatollah and his cronies do not put up with criticism, and they do not put up with demonstrations. And then there's a lot of speculation whether Trump will get involved. I kind of doubt it. It's a world halfway around the world to get involved, and you'd have an internal fight. You look at what's happened in Venezuela, that he's using that vice president to try to get things stabilized. And so he's using someone that was part of the regime there to make some changes. I don't know if that'll work or not, but I think that's what they're trying to see if they can move forward, and that they'll have a government that works and will work with other governments. It's hard to say. But the Iranian thing is really scary, that they're having mass hangings, they've had mass executions, and these are not people that are going to play games. They're out to keep power. The hardest thing to give up, in my opinion, of any group is power. They just will do anything to keep it. And you see that within the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. They're both fighting for the power, and the power to maintain the governing of whatever body it is. And so that's always a very tough thing to work out compromises on.
Do you think President Trump has a great opportunity in Iran right now to show the Iranian people that America can be your friend?
He does, but I don't know how he can stop the massacre, the killing of the people that are demonstrating. Now, he said, if this doesn't stop, we're going to do something. And you know that Madero found out that when he says something, he means it. Whether you like him or dislike him, if he says, I'm going to take you out, Madero called him a coward and a liar and a clown. Mm-hmm. And that's the last person I'd want to, use those names on. And they took him out. One thing it was just touched on briefly, but I think it's been overlooked, is the number of people that were injured. We had 2 people got shot, and I think they were not life-threatening. But we had 1,500 people involved, and we went in and got him out, and he's sitting in jail in Brooklyn and waiting for his trial. And he'll get a trial. He was stupid. I hate to say that. It's not nice. But he was. He didn't graduate from high school. He was a muscle man, and for Hugo Chavez, and helped beat people up that disagreed or whatever. And that no one thought of him as a economic specialist.
He never went to Davos, did he?
No, he didn't go to Davos. He didn't even make it to Dimmitt. We wouldn't have had him. But it was. I think he didn't know. He was told that President Trump is going to agree for you to leave and step down and go to the Middle East someplace. You'll have a place to live in the rest of your life. Swimming pool will be nice and everything. And he was just stupid, and you can't fake stupid. And he lost his power, and it'll be interesting to see what happens. But it's kind of a gamble what they're doing on putting the person in that was his number 2, that was his vice president. But the person that's assuming that position, they know that there's consequences if you don't try to work with them. Venezuela is a rich country in natural resources, and the people are good people, and many are well-educated. And the United States needs to do everything we can to help them and help them be a strength in democracy. The United States is also looking at trying to make sure that the oil companies that had all their property seized, that they get reimbursed for that. And so we'll see what happens. But that's the Davos conference will be big. You'll see a lot of things come out, but most people don't know anything about it. But there'll be a lot of world leaders there. There'll be a lot of business leaders there, and they'll be from all types of economic background.
When you were going back a little bit, when you were talking about speaking at Davos, it reminded me of the story that you told once when you went to a funeral home and you were going to speak at a funeral. And you ended up in the wrong room.
Yeah,
at least you got the right
funeral.
You got the right room at Davos, right?
Yeah, I got in the right room at Davos, and nobody's there to listen. We had about 10 people show up, and I think the 10 that showed up, they worked for Phillips or Exxon or Total. They worked for one of the speakers, one of the people on the panel.
Yeah.
But the story on the funeral, I was running late, and I thought the funeral was at 2 and it was at 2:30. It was a big funeral home and they had different little parlors. And so I go running in with looking around, and it was obvious. And this guy came over and he had a program, everything. He said, this way, Congressman, and gave me a program, everything. I went walking in and he put me right behind the family, everything. I looked down at the program. I didn't know the guy, but I wasn't going to get up and leave.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm trying to figure out what's going on. And the preachers don't call on people out in the audience without giving them a heads up, ahead of time. And don't ever ask, does anyone in the congregation want to say anything? You don't know what's going to happen. And, but the guy said, Congressman Hance is here, and we thought maybe he'd like to say something. and I'm speaking at a guy's funeral, and I don't know him. It was just weird. I did the best I could. I said he was a man that loved his country, and he was. And because I read through the obituary right fast as I could, and he's the type of guy that I could call him and ask his opinion. He wouldn't spread it around that I'd called. And his wife later said he never breathed a word. So unusual. People think that politics is all easy, and it's hard work. And it's hard work. You learn a lot. And I think I always admire people that are running for office.
Can I ask you a question about politics? We see often on TV, reporters standing outside, member of Congress comes outside, comes down the steps. Are they basically saying, okay, I'm here to talk to you? Yeah, I mean, are they making themselves available to that press?
Themselves available
because they could leave a different way in the garage.
You can go down to the basement and walk to any of the 3 House buildings or the 3 Senate buildings. You can do that, but if you're going to walk across the street, there's still another door that you can kind of avoid the press. But the press will be on the east side, down near the bottom. If you want to go say something sensational that'll get in the press, well, then they're going to be there, and they're looking for you to say. Ralph Hall will always say, if you'll say something really stupid and crazy, you're going to make the 5 o'clock news,
There's a lot of that.
And he always said that if you're trying to work out a problem, you're not going to make the news. He called it a workhorse versus show horse. He always said he wasn't a show horse.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious, right, in today's world, who the show horses are in Washington, D.C.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they say stupid things.
Yeah.
And they get on the front page.
Get a lot of national publicity, one way or the other. And it makes people, kind of wonder about what's going on in government. Most people in Congress, in the House and Senate, they want to sit down and see, how can we solve this problem? How can we provide for better health care at a cheaper price? How can we do this? And that's one that continues to be looked at, and that I don't know what's going to happen, but that's going to be a big issue from now on. Inflation, inflation always, when it comes up, it comes fast.
Okay.
It's like trouble rides a fast horse. Inflation rides a very fast horse. And it's going to be there, and you're going to have to make adjustments and see what you do. And you look at the Federal Reserve; they're trying to keep inflation down. Same time, the president wants to expand the money supply and to lower interest rates. And anytime the lower the interest rates, usually the better the economy does. But we had one period of time in the last 10 years with interest rates down to 2%, 1%, and things like that. That's the time to borrow money. It's time when I was in the chancellor's office at Texas Tech. There were times that those interest rates were very low, and we would make certain purchases that it was easier to afford certain things. And also in building buildings, whether you're building dorms or whatever, the interest rates are 2% or 0.5%. You have to get on it and try to take advantage of it.
And the president just asked Fannie and Freddie to buy $200 billion in bonds with the hopes of driving down interest rates. That was interesting.
Right. It was, and I don't know what will happen on that. But Trump's trying to solve some housing problems, and he's taking different approaches than others have taken in the past. And, he's a developer. And so he's going to be, a little different in that regard. Scott Turner's a good friend of mine and Secretary of HUD, and his deputy is Andrew Hughes, who was one of my students at Texas Tech. He's from Arlington Heights in Fort Worth, and is the youngest deputy secretary that Republican Party's ever had. And he's in his 30s, and his deputy secretary usually makes sure day-to-day operations are being run.
Got a bright future.
And he's got a great future, and he'll be able to do all kinds of things. He might even get invited to Davos, Switzerland. But I'm going to tell you, find out who your competition is when you're going to speak. Don't get up there in your competition, Playboy Magazine or something like that, because nobody will come listen to you. You're talking about oil or housing.
Yeah. They want to see Playboy bunnies. They don't want to talk about that.
Yeah, they didn't want to mess with that.
You mentioned earlier the jobs, some of the jobs that are out there that are in demand, and you said a lot of them were in the healthcare field.
Healthcare, and I think the number one job, and I was looking a little earlier, but it had to do with medical technician in cardiac surgery. Well, that's somebody standing in there and doing whatever the doctor tells them to do. It's doing open heart surgery. And a lot of the open heart surgeries now, they go through the groin and they do it that way. But really, the real open heart surgery, you got to go in and saw their chest open, pull their breastbone back, and
take a little bit about
heart
that.
out. Yeah, I had that happen in '96. I had 6 bypasses, and they did an angiogram. And the doctor, he detected something in my workout. And he said, we're going to do, an angiogram. And I was at Presbyterian getting ready to have the angiogram one morning. And they put me off. And they had, and, I know that I'm going to find out I may have to have open heart surgery and all kinds of things. And a nurse came in my room where I've been waiting since about 5 o'clock, and it's almost 10 o'clock. She said, now, have you had anything to eat? I said, just my fingernails. and she was kind of amused at that answer. But you finally get in, and they tell you. So I had my results sent to 7 doctors associated with 7 hospitals. And I got them in Austin, in Dallas, in Houston, in Lubbock, in Fort Worth. And I knew that if I sent out 7 of them, all 7 wouldn't say the same thing. There might be somebody who said, well, I think I can do it without having to saw you open and something comparable to that. All 7 said the same thing. You got to have this done. And so I had 6 bypasses.
Wow.
And, I've changed some of my eating habits, but the big change, I work out every day. And that's usually 45 minutes to an hour. And I walk, and when I'm behind on phone calls trying to catch up, I walk and call and have my earpods and get caught up on what I'm doing, and that helps. You try to do 2 things at once when you're exercising. If you're exercising and on a stationary bike and reading emails. You're getting two things done. And a lot of people don't think you can do that. I do. Mm-hmm. And I've walked. And young people, if they'll walk 20 to 30 minutes a day, 4 times a week, they're going to save themselves a lot. I had a doctor tell me one time that what you put in your stomach before you're 40 determines what we have to take out of your stomach after you're 40. Now, I don't know if that's correct or not, but it's pretty funny.
Did you find that stuff on the jobs?
I do.
Healthcare in particular?
And I've got 11% of the jobs and job openings are in healthcare. But over almost 70% of the jobs that are paying the most of the best jobs are in healthcare. And I don't think that's going to change. You have specialized training. You have technicians, and the technician of one of the persons, and 7 of the 10 are in healthcare, but where there's demand. But you have some of those jobs that you're an assistant to someone like a surgeon that's doing open heart surgery, and it's very difficult to do so. The cardiac medical technician. Salary is $133,907. So it's virtually $134,000. Number 2 was an owner driver of a truck. And there are a lot of people that run a trucking operation that'll have 3 or 4 trucks. And it'll be somebody and their brothers or their brother-in-law and small businessmen. Within the Hispanic community, that has been a fast-growing area. Individuals that become truck drivers and have their own operation, and very good. Third, they had on the list a nurse practitioner, and the owner truck driver. That they say the average on that is about $160,000 a year. There are banks. There are banks in Austin or wherever you go that will loan money on someone driving a truck, getting their own trucking permit, and do that.
They know it's going to be the work's always going to be out there.
Yep.
Yeah.
And well, the one thing that I warn people about coming up in the next 10 years is automation. If a truck driver is not drive, I mean, he's got a truck that carries itself. And I'm here in Austin, so I see these little white cars with it looks like a radar detector or something on
the
top
Waymo,
of them.
yeah.
Waymo.
Yeah.
Last year I was at Sweet 16 in San Francisco and took a ride in a couple of Waymos. One, you don't have to tip them, and 2, they don't talk to you. There's not a lot going on. And they've had problems here in Austin with them not having the software to stop for a bus that's letting children off. So they've had that. That's been a controversy.
But going back to the trucks, there could be a lot of autonomous trucking out there.
Oh, yeah. These are deals where some banker gets into it and that he loans someone in the community, $100,000, $200,000 to get a truck, and then all of a sudden the guy needs 2 trucks, 3. Then he gets up to 4 or 5 trucks, and he's way over $1 million at that point in time. And if he's a hard worker, he's going to do well. They have the truck driving school at South Plains Community College in Levelland and Lubbock. They have truck driving schools, and that if you sign up for one, you're probably going to get a job around $50,000 when you first get out, and then after you've been doing it for a year or maybe even less, you ought to be moving up to $60,000 to $80,000. Been driving 3 years. Biggest problem they have on truck drivers is somebody passing the test, the drug test. And some some don't.
But some of those drivers are amazing. If you ever see them in a big city backing up into an alleyway or something, in fact, you told a good story about that we were at a Walmart or something, and you just stood there and watched him.
I just watched the guy.
Yeah.
He was backing this 18-wheeler up, and I thought, he can't do that. And I watched him, and I was just sitting there. I got out of the car, and one of them said, "You're good." And he laughed. He liked the compliment. But there was a loading dock at this United Supermarkets in Lubbock, and you probably had 6 inches on both sides. And they were trying to utilize space, I guess. And he backed it in there. My grandson, grew up looking at screens of where you're backing. Well, if we go out to someplace to eat and we need to park his truck, his pickup truck someplace, he'll back in around 35, 40 miles an hour, it seems like. I mean, he just gets on it and never looks back. And I always have to look back and make sure that video, make sure the camera's not lying to me. I don't want to get caught up in something like that.
Yeah, but those truck drivers are amazing.
Yeah, they knew what they were doing. They were good at it. They have, on the jobs, the top 10, they have the physical therapist, occupational therapist, radiation therapist, data scientist, and some of those are 110, 120,000 a year. I'll just tell you that if you don't have the money to go to college, you still can become independently wealthy by going to a truck driving school, welding school, whatever, cook, and do that in such a way that you learn a trade that's in demand. I think one of the best trades is HVAC, heating and air conditioning. Hey, I always, if I have problems in the summer and somebody comes out, I get their personal phone number and everything, and I'll tip them $100 because they'll remember me.
Mm-hmm.
And if I have to call them in July or August, my air conditioner's broke, that becomes the best money that I've ever spent.
Mm-hmm.
One last thing, the stupid criminals. Now, some of these people are smart, but they're stupid. And one in Florida, he built this deal. He had a remote control device that would hide the license plate numbers so that the police or a witness couldn't see what, if he'd spent that same amount of time trying to do something, that was good, he'd probably had a chance to do so. Also, I don't hang on every Major League Baseball story comes out, but comes World Series time, I'm always watching. And the Toronto Blue Jays, they have a guy named is Bo Bichette.
Yeah.
And Bo Bichette, they're trying to keep him in Toronto, and so a steakhouse in Toronto offered him free steaks for the rest of his life if he'd stay in Toronto. And PETA came out, and PETA's always getting involved in something they don't have any business being involved in, but they say that they offered him free Viagra for the rest of his life. And the reason is that if you're eating artery clogging meat, can lead to you striking out in the bedroom. So they're going to offset some of that. I don't know. But I thought that was pretty funny.
Boy, you got to give it to PETA. They can get their name out there.
They do.
They're good at it.
Saying of the day, power doesn't change people, but it reveals who they are. So if you get power, don't abuse it.